Wonderful! Double down. What can stop you if you fight together? Nothing. This is how you grow stronger. You're in the lead. 2 for 1. This is how you grow stronger. 2 for 1.
Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Diaslayers, and in this video, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison analysis of the Gunnora Slug Shotgun versus the Blasphemer Slug Shotgun and find out which one of these two beautiful beasts is truly the best among the two. As many of you are already aware, Iron Banner is back this week, and that means that you can get the Gunnora Shotgun by number 1, turning in tokens to Lord Saladin, and hopefully he's going to give you that thing, or by number 2, turning in bounties, and then maybe you might just get one to drop that way too. As for the Blasphemer Shotgun, that thing you can get by doing the Altars of Sorrow public event on the moon, and the best way in which I can describe that is it's kind of like what we had way back when with Escalation Protocol, but even so, one of these is a kinetic shotgun while the other is an energy. This means that you're probably not going to be using them both at the exact same time, and rather you're going to use one or the other. And so for us, we have to figure out as to exactly which one of these two things is going to be better for different types of engagements, or is one better for an aggressive playstyle, a passive playstyle, or somewhere in between. The best way for us to really comprehend this and to figure this out is to analyze each one of these weapons' range, their bullet magnetism, what kind of perks can roll on each, their PvP stats, their base stats, and all that kind of jazz, so that by the end of this, you can really grasp as to which one of these two is going to be best for you, your playstyle, or your ideal scenarios in which you want to use it the most. To find out these weapons' similarities and differences, the only thing left to do is just to simply sit back, relax, hit that notification button, and let's jump right into the video. The very first thing that we had to inspect is each one of these two perk combinations that I happen to have. The reason why this is so important is because then it gives us a very good baseline as to what you're seeing from this game footage, and also some of the test cases and how they might be different from one to the next. First up is the Blasphemer Shotgun, and this thing's got Swashbuckler, Quick Draw, Assault Mag, Arrowhead Break, is a precision frame weapon with a reload masterwork and an Icarus mod. Ensuing this is of course the Gunnora, and this thing just so happens to have Opening Shot, Outlaw, Assault Mag, Full Bore, is a precision frame weapon with a handling masterwork and an Icarus mod. Now we'll get into all the perks that each one of these two things can actually roll with later in the video, but for right now, what I just want to do is I want to explain all the differences and their similarities. As far as their similarities go, each one of these things has Assault Mag, is a precision frame weapon, and they both have an Icarus mod. If you were to ask me, that's one of the huge advantages about using one of these two slug shotguns or any slug shotgun, is because when you happen to have an Icarus mod on these things, they are extremely accurate in the air and they can be used ungodly efficiently and effectively in a wide variety of environments. This is something that actually cannot be done with the Chaperone, even though it's still also a slug shotgun. It doesn't happen to have an Icarus mod or an Icarus perk in it to make it viable in the air. And so in this sense, both these two weapons are much more effective in these aerial scenarios, saying boom, headshot. One other similarity that each one of these two things has is that they're both classified as a precision frame weapon. And with this perk, or rather I should say with this frame, they all have an intrinsic perk called Counterbalance back in the days from Destiny 1. What that perk did is it converted 80% of horizontal recoil into vertical recoil, which is why each one of these things can potentially get 2 body shots very quickly, even though I don't suggest this because hey, we all like to have their precision and make enemy guardians a little bit salty. The last similarity that each one of these two things has is they both happen to have on Assault Mag, and we're going to cover this significantly in the weapons TTK stats, but before we can even get into that, you also have to understand the weapons differences, and that is specifically Swashbuckler and Quick Draw on the Blasphemer, followed by Opening Shot and Outlaw on the Gunnora. Mentioning these differences is vital and pivotal to state, because that then means the Blasphemer can be used in a wide variety of aggressive engagements via Quick Draw, but then it can also do more types of range engagements as soon as you happen to get that first kill, second kill, and third kill, and so on because of Swashbuckler. But the Gunnora is much more consistent, and it also has more engagements that it can initially be in due to Opening Shot, as that perk is then going to give the weapon more range and accuracy on the opening shot of attack. With this, I think that you guys now comprehend fully as to how each one of these two things is different and also similar. But in taking one teeny tiny step back, I want you all to remember that both these two things happens to have on Assault Mag, And the reason why this is so significant is because Assault Mag actually increases each one of these weapons' rate of fire by 5. It takes it from 65 to 70, and that you might not think is a big difference, but in reality it is, especially if you're going for double body shots. By now, there is no doubt in my mind that many of you have already recognized that each one of these two things is doing 258 points of damage per crit and 147 points of damage for a body. Of course, if you happen to get a critical headshot, bada bing bada boom, that guardian's gonna be sent to the afterlife in an instant. But if you just so happen to get double body shots, this is where things get quite interesting, especially if you happen to have Assault Mag like each one of these two things does. With or without Assault Mag, each one of these two things is still going to require 2 body shots to get a body shot TTK value. But if you happen to have no Assault Mag at all, that's then going to make the body shot TTK at 0.93 seconds. But if you happen to have Assault Mag on top of this then, that's actually going to increase the TTK to be at 0.87 seconds. Just that we can really visualize this, here's all the weapons information and stats that I've just said on screen. And so the most notable thing to comprehend here is that Assault Mag with the Blasphemer is on the left, but the Gunnora's Axe with its base PvP stats is on the right hand side. The game footage that you have seen and will continue to see is both with Assault Mag on both of these two weapons. But for a side-by-side comparison analysis, I think that this really demonstrates the point that there could potentially be a big difference here, but realize that each one of these computations was done with a Guardian at 10 resilience, aka 201 points of health. At this point in time, I think it's a fair assessment to say that each one of these two things is still equal, at least in terms of PvP, because those two base stats clearly dictate that they are literally identical, and the only real difference here is if one happens to have Assault Mag or the other does, or maybe both of them will, or maybe both of them won't. This is really all up to RNG, but something that might help us better understand as to which one of these two things is actually better than the other is to look at each one of these two weapons' base stats, and so you guys can see those right there on screen. All the black values that you see is the weapon stats, but as far as the blue values go, that's the perks that I happen to have with the adjustments of their base stats associated with them. And so in taking this into account, you can clearly see that for the weapon's range, stability, handling speed, and reload speed, the Gunnora's Axe beats out the Blasphemer in every single one of those categories. But as far as aim assistance and recoil direction goes, that's where the Blasphemer clearly beats out the Gunnora's Axe by a mile. Depending upon where you stay on the spectrum, some Guardians might say that range is clearly the number one thing that's the most important here, and if that's the case, then the Gunnora's Axe is definitely the way that you want to go, or at least that's what you think. I might change your mind about that in a little bit, but as far as aim assistance and recoil direction goes, then maybe you might be thinking Blasphemer is the way to go. But once again, I say hold your horses and let me see if I can't change your mind by potentially going to some private matches and testing the weapon's overall effective ranges. Before I go into those private matches, understand that I'm doing 3 things. The first one is to take out the Darcy and measure the exact difference without moving my feet, so that I'm testing literally the exact same distance for both of these two weapons. Secondly and thirdly, I'm then going to be using my Blasphemer followed by my Gunnora's Axe, and this is then going to dictate as to which kind of damage fall-off that we have via the weapon's numbers, and this could also be affected by the weapon's perks, and to really see this all, we gotta go into that private match. As I take out my Darcy and measure 9 meters, we then see that the Blasphemer is doing 258 points of damage, followed by the Gunnora's Axe doing the exact same thing, and this tells us that there's no damage fall-off at 9 meters. However, at 10 meters, this isn't the case, and so after measuring that distance with my Darcy, you can tell with the Blasphemer that its damage is now 228, which is lower than 258, and the same thing can also be said with the Gunnora's Axe at 252, which is lower than, once again, 258. Obviously, they can still one-shot at 10 meters, but going back to 11 meters, this is no longer the case, because with the Blasphemer, this is then doing 190 points of damage, and the reason why this doesn't down my very good friend Mock Flux is because he is currently running 5 resilience throughout all these test cases. We can see that with the Gunnora's Axe, it was still doing 215 points of damage, enough to still down him in one shot at that distance. Lastly, I'm testing each one of these two things out at 12 meters with that Darcy. As soon as I happen to measure it, we then see that the Blasphemer is doing 153 points of damage per crit, followed by the Gunnora's Axe to be at 178, meaning that both these two things can no longer one-shot Guardians at 12 meters. And seeing all these test cases, what I really want you to take away from this is that both of these two things were certainly affected by number 1, opening shot, and number 2, their increase in range perks such as full bore. Remember, the Gunnora's Axe not only has opening shot, but it also has on full bore, and the same thing cannot be said for that Blasphemer because it has absolutely no range increase perks whatsoever. Is that going to make a difference in the results that you guys just saw? Yes, it certainly is. And so does that mean that the Blasphemer can't one-shot at 11 meters? No, it doesn't mean that at all. And rather, if opening shot was on the Blasphemer, then maybe it could have also done that, and most likely, it probably would have done the exact same thing as what you saw with the Gunnora's Axe. This then brings me to my next point, and that is that even with those two perks on the Gunnora's Axe, you guys saw that there was a very minute difference in these effective weapon ranges. And so this then means to you that maybe what you should look for instead of just maxed out range perks is other types of synergy perks like what's on the Blasphemer. Because a lot of Guardians have this one-track mindset, meaning that you have to have range perks on things all the time 24/7, and that is not the case. You know your playstyle better than anybody else, and so for you, figure out what's going to fit that playstyle the best. And the next thing that might be able to help you out with this even more so is each one of these two weapons pull-off perks. And the best way that I can show you this is by once again a side-by-side comparison analysis of the Blasphemer shotgun on the left and the Gunnora's Axe on the right. You guys can tell that not only are the exact same perks the exact same thing in the first and second columns, but as far as their third and fourth column of perks go, they have very similar perks here as well. And so to you, it's really just going to dictate as to what kind of perks that you're looking for. Maybe if you want to have a better chance of getting opening shot, then going with something like the Blasphemer is 110% the way to go. But at the same time, you also have to remember that if you want to have something like full auto, that can only roll on the Gunnora's Axe, and that cannot roll on the Blasphemer. And so in this respect, you might want to go for a Gunnora's Axe over a Blasphemer. These are really the things that you guys have to ask yourself when you're thinking about going for a God roll Gunnora's Axe or a God roll Blasphemer to actually eradicate, decimate, and obliterate every single Guardian in your path. Now, something else that I think that every single one of you Diaslayers out there is going to find very intriguing and also enlightening is testing each one of these two things in terms of their bullet magnetism. For those of you that don't know what this is exactly how much that you can quote-unquote miss a Guardian and still have the game register that the bullet is landing. And the best way to test this is by going right back into that private match, and right here we can see a side-by-side comparison analysis of the Blasphemer on the left and the Gunnora's Axe on the right. What you'll notice is that I'm doing 6 test cases in total, 3 on the right hand side of the head and 3 on the top side of the head. And for the right hand side of the head, I'm using the sight to gauge as to how much that I can miss by, and on the top side of the head, I'm then gauging this by the Guardian's health as well as the name and how they're respectively related to the Guardian's head. On the right hand side of the head, you all just witnessed that I can miss by a significant margin for that first and second shot, and it wasn't until the third shot that I finally missed, and that right there was mind-boggling to me. But it gets even better, because as you go to the top side of the head, I was shooting directly in the middle of the health bar, got him, went up to the middle of his name, got him again, and then finally it wasn't until I went above his name till I finally actually missed, and yet again, this was extremely surprising. In seeing that, what I want you to remember and take away from it is that the Gunnora's Axe actually has a greater overall range factor than that of the Blasphemer, and usually that greater range factor normally equates to a greater increase in bullet magnetism, but as you guys just saw, the Blasphemer and that of the Gunnora's Axe was almost identical in all those test cases. Is it going to make a drastic difference that might make or break the weapon? Maybe to some it might, and maybe to others it doesn't. But if you were to ask me, I would say this is something that's very negligible, and the other things that you might want to take into account is the perk synergy that's going to fit your playstyle the best for one of these two monsters. Hopefully, RNG is definitely going to be on your side to get the god roll that you guys are seeking. But in the meantime, let me know what you guys think about all this shenanigans down in the comment section below. Did you like the tests? Did you not? Were they conclusive for you into determining as to which one of them is better, or are you still up in the air? No matter where you stand on this spectrum, you can all know that I'm going to respect your opinions, and that is something that I can guarantee 110%. Lastly, be sure to watch the newest, check the latest, and share, comment, like on social media because you are the greatest. That's pretty much all I've got for you guys right now, Diaslayers. And as always, GG TNT.